The resort communities of Dare County have long played host to millions of visitors each year who come to enjoy the wide, clean beaches, the relaxed atmosphere, and the hospitality of the locals. It is a paradise of sorts, long considered a place where people felt safe leaving their houses unlocked and the keys in the vehicle. But in the 1990s, Dare County was rocked by a series of brutal murders which cast a pall over the community. In 1991, Michael Dial decapitated his girlfriend, Brenda Dozier, and tried to conceal his crime by dragging her body into the ocean. In 1995, Douglas Mont killed his 3 children at the Wright Memorial Airport, then committed suicide as officers were closing in to arrest him. But it is the 1997 unsolved murder of Denise Johnson that cast the longest shadow over the Outer Banks. A bright, strikingly attractive woman, Denise was a local, well known, with a large circle of friends. Her sister Donnie reflects back on the young girl who loved animals and the woman who could brighten anyone's day with just her smile.
Mom and Daddy had 6 girls. We were all named with D's, and I am the 4th, and Denise was the youngest. Daddy wanted a boy named David, and he had 6 girls. So he was going to name all the children with D's till he got a boy. We were raised in Kildover Hills, and we'd spend, of course, every summer down here. And but when there was nothing here, the bypass was still a 2-lane. There were mostly just those cinder block homes that you see. You don't see many of them anymore, but that's about all that was here. A lot of sand hills that we'd climb and run around. We lived on Norfolk Street, and that was the cottage that we all grew up in, the one Denise was murdered in. Denise was always smiling, just everything. If you were sad, Denise would smile and just pretty much make you forget what you were upset about. Denise's personality was bubbly, very outgoing. She liked everybody. She was a tough girl, but very feminine girl. She always would make a friend, and easy to make friends. She had lots of friends. Her personality was outgoing. She wasn't real shy. She was just a happy girl. Denise, like all 6 of us, loved the ocean, and the way I recall the way we all learned to swim was our dad just, when we were 5 years old, just threw us in the ocean, and it was sink or swim. So we all, learned to love swimming in the ocean, and that's what Denise liked to do when she would go to the beach. She would play Frisbee, swim, and play with her dog, Frisbee on the beach, and just lay out. She just liked to lay out in the sun. Denise loved animals. She wanted to be a vet. That was her thing she wanted to do. Growing up, we had 18 cats that Denise would find a cat. The only animal she did not like were mice. She was terrified of a mouse, but she loved cats. She especially loved dogs. She loved horses and birds, just any animal, and children. She loved kids. Denise moved to Florida not long after high school and stayed there till she was probably 26, and then came back to the beach. My mom, Denise and Mama were very, very close, and when Mama got ill, Denise wanted to be closer, so she moved back home and eventually moved to the cottage. When Mama passed, she left Denise the cottage, and that's where she decided to live. She still wanted to pursue her veterinary skills. I think she was planning on going to the Nags Head Animal Hospital and work there and just do whatever until she could, move her way on up and try to get into school. And her whole focus was animals. Denise had a circle of friends that I would say tight 6 or 7 real close friends. A lot of people knew Denise. A lot of people loved Denise's smile and cared about her. But she had a tight-knit group of friends that she played baseball with. And Denise was a very athletic, person. She stayed busy. She was always running on the beach with her dog, K Ridge. She'd want me to mention K Ridge. So she was very, that kept her in good shape, and she was just physically athletic. She was very particular about her appearance. She liked to look nice, and I remember if we were ever going to do anything when she got older, I always had to tell her that we had to go half an hour earlier than really, just so she could get ready. Because she had to be perfect, She didn't like her hair out of place, very particular about her hair. If she was going somewhere, she wasn't going to be in jeans and t-shirt. She was going to be looking good. When I got married, Denise was still living in Florida, so she came down for the wedding, and she spent a long time fixing my hair, and I remember right before it was time for the wedding, she took an extra moment to make sure my hair was fixed and that I looked, she told me I looked beautiful, and just being niece, she just, wanted to make sure I looked just so. And I'll always remember that because it was a real touching moment that, that she took the time to just make sure I looked good.
In the early morning hours of July 13, 1997, a 911 caller reported smoke coming from a residence in the 2000 block of Norfolk Street, a quiet neighborhood in the middle of the town of Kill Devil Hills. Among the first to respond was Patrolman Mark Evans, now captain with Kill Devil Hills PD, and firefighter Glenn Rainey, now the deputy chief of Collington Fire Department. With smoke visible from the Johnson home, both were prepared for the worst, but what they discovered was beyond anything either man could have anticipated.
Back in 1997, on the date of the incident, I was a patrolman working the routine night patrol duty. I'd been with the town about a year and a half. On the night of the 13th of July, 1997, I was dispatched to assist the fire department on a routine fire call, what I thought was a routine fire call, at 2014 Norfolk Street.
We were all asleep, of course, and the fire call comes in, and in the back of your mind, you always hope it's nothing. We're always there to help, but you always hope it's nothing. The address didn't ring a bell. Nothing really stood out to me that anything was going to be any different till we got in the truck. My captain thought he recognized the address. We get en route, and we had a report of smoke and flames showing en route, so that kind of changes the game. So we're gearing up, ready to go with the rest of my crew. And as we turn onto the street, there's smoke blowing across the street, so it's obvious it's not going to be a false alarm.
And what I noticed from my perspective as I was turning on Norfolk Street was heavy smoke coming from the residence. My duty as a first responder is to assist the fire department and assist with any life-saving measures. So therefore I went up to the house as the fireman was making entry into the doorway. I remember I went around to the side of the house, and having several years of fire and EMS experience, I recall pulling the meter off the house to assist the fire department in that.
Going in, there's two fires. There's one, which is kind of odd. There's one on a sofa and there's one on a chair, just as you come into like a little living room, if I recall. Put that out fairly quickly. Next step is to do a quick search, which we always would do anyway, to just ensure nobody's home. Then I heard my partner call, and his voice was different than I'd ever heard it before. It was obvious that we had probably found a victim. I made my way back through the smoke to my partner, Rick, and there was a young lady on the floor of the bathroom, lying face down.
I remember looking in, and I remember seeing a body straight down the hallway, which was a small residence. About the same time, I remember one of the firefighters coming out with his gear on, breathing apparatus, and screaming at me that there was a body inside of the house.
There was a lot of blood, but it was so hot and the smoke was so thick, the best thing to do, in my mind, was to get her out of there. I did grab, who later turned out to be Denise, and pulled her out onto the front lawn, and was attempting CPR when I realized that the injuries that she had sustained were not compatible with life, unfortunately. It's only the second time that I'd found someone during a rescue operation or a search and rescue operation, and that's 2 times too many. You train for it, but you never want it.
Me being an EMT and had been for several years at that point, my main concern was to provide first aid. I recall the victim's eyes being open, and I immediately knew from my experience and training that she was not breathing. Upon a quick primary survey of the body, I noticed that there appeared to be what I call a puncture wound to the neck area, and sequence events quickly led me to believe that this was more than just a routine fire, that we had a potential homicide here.
Well, once we located Denise and brought her outside, our job is not over. We still have a fire to deal with. Could there be somebody else? We found one. We knew this wasn't right. Something was terribly wrong with this scene. So I went back in to be so my partner wasn't by himself. And the smoke has started to clear at this point. Other firefighters have arrived. They're doing their jobs. The truck company's doing their job, and it's making it better for us inside. Law enforcement's doing their thing on the outside with EMS, trying to give Denise every benefit that she possibly could have gotten.
From the time that the firefighters had got the victim to the door, and after a quick initial assessment, I knew that this was not a routine call. That what we usually respond to may be a victim that had succumbed to smoke and fire had actually had died from possible stab wounds or gunshot wounds. So at that point, I radioed the dispatch and advised them that I needed the on-call detective.
The first investigator to respond to the scene was Detective Sergeant Jim Mulford, a 20-year veteran with the Kill Devil Hills PD. Sergeant Mulford would go on to head up the Denise Johnson murder investigation, coordinating efforts with other local, state, and federal agencies. But on the morning of July 13th, he was in for as much of a surprise as anyone, believing he'd just been called to assist with a routine arson investigation.
I'm Jim Mulford. I moved to the Outer Banks in 1974. I started with the Sheriff's Office in 1977, November 1st, 1977. Then in July of '86, I started with the Kill Devil Hills Police Department, and I stayed with them for 20 years. I was called at home sometime before 5 a.m. on July 13th. And the call I got, or the call I remember getting, was of a structure fire on Norfolk Street. So I get up and put shorts and a t-shirt on and go to a structure fire and find out that it's also a homicide. We started working the crime scene. We called in the State Bureau of Investigation. And in the meantime, then I went home and changed clothes, naturally, because we had to start going out on the road and start interviewing people. When the SBI, Agent Varnell, arrived at the scene and we started our preliminary investigation, we realized we needed a crime scene technician to come in. And I always felt that we were fortunate in the eastern part of North Carolina. We had Dennis Honeycutt, who worked for State Bureau of Investigation at the time as a crime scene technician. Everybody would just, if you hear that Dennis is coming to the scene, there's always a sigh of relief that, well, you knew it was going to be done right and very professional, and never any question to his ability or skills. And Varnell called Dennis to come down, and actually Dennis was on vacation at the time, and he broke off his vacation, got his equipment, and came to Kill Devil Hills to work the crime scene, which everybody was very appreciative of. It actually offended the crime scene technician, a local one we had with the SBI, but I knew Dennis's work, and we were all familiar with Dennis, and we called Dennis in, and he came without question. It was never mentioned that he was on vacation. He just arrived and did his job. Denise's case was different, being that it was a murder plus an arson combined. The arson apparently was trying to cover up the murder. My initial impression of the scene was that this was not going to be very difficult. Denise Johnson was well known. She was working in a local restaurant. It was going to be simply find out who she was with that night or the night before and that it would be, I honestly felt like it would be done and wrapped up that day. I didn't think this would be a crime that would go on for so long, unsolved. After about 3 days, I realized or not just me, but we all weren't making any headway. We didn't have any solid suspects. We had an autopsy report from Greenville, which did give us a cause of death, which was a combination of trauma to the body with a knife and then smoke inhalation. But the police department treated this case as their #1 priority. I was assigned solely to the case for as long as I needed, and had all the resources of the department and the town, and for whatever I needed, or the manpower I needed, or equipment that I needed, and we just stayed on it until everything, all our leads just ended. We had nothing to hold on to. And you know, we took the case to the FBI, to the profiling up in Virginia, spent a day with them, and they couldn't pinpoint anything weird. I mean, we're trying, you know, grasping at straws. We actually had a psychic contact us and told us that she took what she knew of the case to their annual convention in Las Vegas, and with something like 200 psychics came back with the opinion that we hadn't talked to the perpetrator yet, with all the people we talked to, and she stated that we haven't talked to the right one yet. That was interesting, you know. After we talked, after we interviewed everybody we could think of, everybody that anytime we got a phone call, we'd follow up on it, and didn't start doing other cases until we actually touched and talked to every single person involved in the case, or even rumors we were getting in, or, hey, have you talked to this person? We'd say, no, but we'll go ahead and do it, you know. And it's just a lot of stuff was just goose chases we were doing, but we had to do it just because you never know. Denise was very well liked and well known in the community, and this shocked all her friends, and the shocked neighbors. Just couldn't understand how something like this could happen in their little world of safety. And her friends and family were constantly in touch with the police department, all wanting to give money to get a good reward for the information. They were all very upset, and I felt like they were very frustrated that it just wasn't wrapped up, which we all were frustrated with that. And they just couldn't understand why we didn't have answers for them, why we couldn't solve this case. I believe with Denise Johnson's friendly attitude on life, her outlook on life, she was always, you know, friendly with people, and I'm sure she had a friend over that night, or an acquaintance, someone she knew. And I don't know what escalated that evening that would cause her death, but it was, in my opinion, it was someone that she knew, and something just went very wrong that night.
Many of us know the emotional pain from losing someone close to us, but few can imagine what the impact of the senseless, cold-blooded murder of a loved one might have. Donnie Johnson revisits that terrible evening when she learned of her sister's death, and how Denise's murder continues to affect those she left behind.
In 1997, I was living in Raleigh. It was a Sunday morning. My sister called me and told me Denise had been killed. Well, my first reaction was, did she get in a car accident? And she said, no, she was murdered. Well, I just about fell out. It was Sunday, I was getting ready to go to church, so I remember calling the kid's father and getting them, and I just rushed on home. And got there that day, that Sunday. And we all got together at my sister's house and just were devastated. We had no idea who would ever want to hurt Denise, being such a sweet girl. We just were pretty much all in shock. And we consequently had to sell the cottage, and it was redone very nicely and sold again. And I am thankful for the person putting the sun up there on the top of it, because that was, Denise had a sun on the house outside, and it just represented Denise, sunshine, just sunshine. She was a ray of sunshine. So the person who put the sun up there, you know, remembered Denise, knew Denise, and did that for her, a little memory thing. It's hard to go, even though I make myself do it, to go by the cottage, because it's just a lot of memories there. A lot of great memories. But the last memory ruined a lot of the good memories. You know, it's always the family that hurts. You know, I know Denise is in heaven and doesn't hurt anymore. But the person that did this is just, it was an awful, awful way to kill someone, and it was cruel and barbaric. And Denise did not deserve it at all. And no matter what you think she did, you know, if she hurt your feelings or whatever, she didn't deserve what happened to her and the cruelty of it.
Time is a relentless enemy in any criminal investigation, particularly murder investigations. Collect evidence before it is lost. Interview witnesses before memories fade. Question suspects before they disappear. In the Denise Johnson case, the police turned over every stone in the hunt for her killer, but still came up empty-handed. Time, it seemed, had won. But over the years, a funny thing happens with time. Relationships change. Remorse builds. People who may have been fearful of coming forward years ago for whatever reason are now ready to talk. Time, once that relentless enemy, is now an ally. By bringing this story to you, by reminding people that Denise Johnson is not just a murder statistic, but a person, a much-loved sister, a friend, and a daughter. The hope is that people who have information about this case will come forward and answer the lingering questions surrounding this tragedy. Denise's family deserves to know why she died. If you can help, if you have even the smallest scrap of information, it is never too late to step up and do the right thing. Tipsters can remain anonymous by calling Crime Line at 252-473-3111 or by visiting the website at darecommunitycrimeline.org. On behalf of Crime Line and the law enforcement community, I'm John Towler with the Kill Devil Hills Police Department.
And I often think of her and think of this case, and I hope by bringing it back to life that justice can be served.
Somebody knows something, you know, and we need to get this out to the community, and that one little tip could help solve this. And it's been 15 years, and we're going to continue to work it.
I always hope that there's going to be a lab tech out in Raleigh checking the DNA, and one day it's going to match up with the suspect and Denise. And hopefully bring all this to an end.
If I could talk to Denise's friends or anybody that is afraid to come forward, if you decided to come forward, the police would keep you safe. You know, you're not going to be out there. Names wouldn't be dropped. You can be an anonymous tipper. But I feel, you know, 15 years later, you'd be safer now, and you could feel more comfortable coming forward with anything that you know. And even if you don't think it's pertinent, it might be. And I just would urge anybody who thinks they know anything to contact the police, either anonymously through their website or physically, and tell them whatever you know.